You didn't read it? Yeah. Anybody else read it yet? Well, we'll just put you on the spot then. So it's interesting. Last week it was essentially the first three verses, in my opinion, carried the meat of the chapter. But as you get into chapter 12, really the first, I would venture to say 26, maybe a few more verses really are not the meat of the chapter, and we're going to read it because I think it's important to read it all, and we're studying, and so I'll get to butcher some names for you again, and but we, in the earlier part of chapter 11, again, we saw the leadership, we saw the things that they did in order to try to draw people there into Jerusalem. They drew straws or cast lots, whatever you want to call it. And then we really talked a lot about those that willingly chose to live and dwell there. And we saw, and a lot of that because of the fact that it made it a point in the Scripture to talk about that there would be special blessings for those that chose willingly to dwell there. The leaders were not; they really didn't have a choice. And then those that cast lots and had to live there, they didn't have a choice. But there were some that willingly chose, and we talked about why it was what it was. The difficulty of living in Jerusalem. And now, as we get into chapter 12, we're going to see again those first 26 verses really deal with a group of people. The first group is the priests that in the days of Zerubbabel, the high priest, and then when you get into the next several verses, you're going to see the Levites, and then the next set of verses deal with the priest in the days of Joachim. And so just a lot of names here. And again, you know that, it may not really seem as significant to us as it did them in their day. Why was it important for them to identify these people? The lineage, the leaders, it was important because if they could not track them back and trace them back and identify their lineage, then they weren't fit to serve in the roles that they were needed in. And so it was very important for that. So for them, it was historical data, that they be able to identify them. And for us, while we're not trying to identify whether or not these people were eligible, if you will, to carry the positions that of a priest or of a Levite, for us, it's more of a fact that, hey, we have the historical data that goes back, and that's to me all of the historical pieces that we look at in the Scriptures that may not have a whole lot of, really there's not a lot of spiritual meaning for us in these names, okay? I'm just going to be honest with you on that. You can try to over-spiritualize it if you want to, but I can't come up with anything. Maybe you're better than I am in that, but I just can't make that a super spiritual thing for us today, other than, hey, this is facts. History throughout, the historical books have these same names. And so we have to, we hold to that. And so we're going to start reading. And so again, verses 1 through 11 is the priest and the Levites in the days of Zerubbabel the high priest. And then 12 through 21 is the priest in the days of Joachim. And then in 22 through 26 are the Levites during the reign of Darius the Persian. And so we'll just begin in verse number 1. We're going to read down through verse 26 to start with, and then we'll kind of get into a little bit more detail in the scriptures. But now these are the priests of the Levites that went up with Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua, Sariah, Jeremiah, Ezra, Amariah, Malach, Haddish, Shechaniah, Rehum, Meremoth, Iddo, Ginetho, Abijah, Meamin, Maadiah, Bilgah, Shemaiah, and Joarib, Jediah, Salu, Amok, Hilkiah, Jediah. These were the chief priests and of their brethren in the days of Joshua. Moreover, the Levites, Joshua, Binnui, Kadmiel, Sherebiah, Judah, and Mattaniah, which was over the thanksgiving, he and his brethren. Also, Bakbukiah and Uni, their brethren, were over against them in the watches. And Joshua begat Joachim, and Joachim also begat Eliashib, and Eliashib begat Joiada. And Joiada begat Jonathan, and Jonathan begat Jaddua. And in the days of Joachim were priests, the chief of the fathers of Sariah, Meriah, of Jeremiah, Hananiah, of Ezra, Meshulam, of Amariah, Jehohanan, of Melichu, Jonathan, of Shebaniah, Joseph, of Haram, Adnah, of Meraioth, Hilkiah, of Iddo, Zechariah, of Ginnethon, Meshulam, of Abijah, Zechariah, of Meniamin, of Moadiah, Piltai, of Bilgah, Shammua, of Shemaiah, Jehonathan, and of Joiarib, Mattani, of Jediah, Uzai, of Salai, Kalai, of Amok, Eber, of Hilkiah, Hashabiah, of Jediah, Nethaneel. The Levites in the days of Eliashib, Joiada, and Johanan, and Jaddua were recorded chief of the fathers. Also the priests to the reign of Darius the Persian. Sons of Levi, the chief of the fathers, were written in the book of the Chronicles, even unto the days of Johanan, the son of Eliashib. And the chief of the Levites, Hashabiah, Sherebiah, Jeshua, the son of Kadmiel, with their brethren over against them to praise and to give thanks according to the commandment of David, the man of God, ward over against ward. Mattaniah and Bakbukiah, Obadiah, Meshulam, Talmon, Akab were porters, keeping the ward at the threshold of the gates. These were in the days of Joachim, the son of Joshua, the son of Jozadak, and in the days of Nehemiah, the governor of Ezra, the priest, the scribe, and at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem. We're going to read verses 27 through 29 now. And at the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, they sought the Levites out of all their places to bring them to Jerusalem, to keep the dedication with gladness, both with thanksgiving and with singing, with cymbals, psalteries, and with harps. And the sons of the singers gathered themselves together, both out of the plain country round about Jerusalem, and from the village of Netophathi, and from the